Hello and welcome to the Carnegie webinar. We're talking about GA4 events today, using GA4 events to understand user behavior. My name is Elizabeth Glass. I'm the Director of Google Analytics here at Carnegie.
And my name is Rachel Robison. I am a Senior Google Analytics Specialist at Carnegie. All right, so the goal of today's webinar is to better understand how we can use GA4 events to take a look at how users interact with your website. GA4 uses an event-based model, meaning every user interaction is considered an event. So events as small as the first visit or the start of a session, all the way to filling out a form and submitting it. With this event-based model, we are able to much more easily track the user journey on your website.
So today's agenda, we're going to start with talking about your GA4 setup, and then we'll go into creating events and then reporting on events. So let's start with your GA4 setup. So your first step is to make sure that you are accurately measuring your website and make sure Google Analytics property and your Google Tag Manager settings are correctly configured. So looking at your GTM, you want to make sure that you do have a Google tag that's configured to send the event information over to your GA4 property through the measurement ID. You do want to ensure that there is just one GTM code on your website on all the pages you want to track, including your main domain pages and any subdomain pages. And you do want to confirm that the GA4 data stream is collecting events as expected. You'll see in your GA4 console that it will tell you that it's collecting events, or you can go into your real time and see that people are actually on your website right now. In GA4, you do want to make sure you have your primary settings set. So you want to look at enhanced measurements and make sure they're enabled. You want to look at your data retention and make sure it's set to 14 months. And then you also want to look at your tag configuration and make sure that ignore duplicate instances of tracking is checked. You just want to make sure that you're only getting one set of data rather than duplicate tagging. So we mentioned enhanced measurements. What are these? These are what are collected by Google Analytics when you turn them on in the enhanced measurements. And they are set to collect default basic activity across your website. So the first one is page view, which is by default already on. So they're going to track how many page views you get on each page, and it's counting each one as an event. And then as you go through these, you can see their scroll, where it's going to look at all users where they hit 90% on the page. Click, so it's tracking all the external clicks on your site. Site search, this is where the users are on your site and they're searching for something in your search bar. And if the default settings are set correctly for this, then Google will track what the site word or what the search word is. Form interactions, so forms across your site that have the GA4 tracking on it. When someone hits submit on those forms, it should come into Google Analytics if it's by their settings. Video engagement. So now we're looking at YouTube videos, and it will track if someone started a video, how far through the video they got, and if they completed watching the video. And then file downloads. So now we're talking about clicks to download files. Google will, if it's within their settings, go ahead and set all this. Now, I say all this to say if it's within their settings, because Google does try to capture the most commonly used settings in all of these, but there are instances where it may not capture all of your website activity.
Yes, so going off of what Elizabeth said, there are some scenarios where enhanced measurement will not be able to track the event that you are hoping for. So there are many, but we are going to cover some of the most common examples that we see. The first is with the site search custom or enhanced measurement event. It may not be accurately capturing if your query parameter is not correct in the settings, or if you don't have a query parameter at all in your URL. GA4 uses the query parameter as a way to detect that the site search occurred, as well as how to pull in the search term. So if it's not correct in your settings, or if it's not in your parameter or in your URL at all, Google is unable to detect the site search. Another example is if you have multiple search functions on your website. For example, maybe you have a general site search and you also have a program site search. Because these are used for two different things, you maybe want to consider this two separate events and not just one generic site search event. In this instance, you would want to create a custom event. Another example is with the video engagements that the enhanced measurement typically captures, but not all the time. So an example of this would be if you are using a video player that is not YouTube. We often will see Vimeo used in higher education, and this is not automatically captured by GA4. If you are using YouTube, even your embedded YouTube videos may not be properly captured if you're missing this parameter in your URL. Again, GA4 is looking for this parameter to be able to detect the video engagement. And then lastly, looking at form tracking captured by enhanced measurement, there are more than a few scenarios where you will need to create some custom events. So some of these include multi-page forms or advanced HTML forms, if your form lives within an iframe, or if it's a dynamic form. What's awesome about GA4's event-based model is not only are you capturing the event, but there are typically parameters that are collected along with that so that you can get more context when you add them as custom dimensions in GA4. So some examples of custom dimensions that we commonly see added in GA4 are the click URL. So you can see which URL was clicked on, the click text, or even the page location, where did the event occur, the page ver, so what was the user's previous URL before the page that they visited where the event occurred, the traffic type, which is especially valuable if you have set up your internal traffic roles in GA4. And then lastly, you may actually have a more unique parameter name that you yourself named in Google Tag Manager with one of your GA4 event tags. For example, we often will see a single GA4 event for tour registrations. However, there's many different types of tours that they may be registering for. You may have a unique parameter name that you call tour name, and then you would add that in GA4 as a custom dimension called tour name. So you can pull in that additional context when you're reviewing these events.
So let's talk about creating events now. The first thing you want to do is look through your website and find a plan looking at key events on your website. And so you want to look at high value actions. The main ones we're looking for are RFI forms, event sign up, application completion. There could be other links that you want to look at that you would consider important events. If someone clicks on a Give link or on the alumni page. And then you're going to want to make a list of all of these important actions on your website. So create a plan and use the page URL. Make sure you have that written down. You also want to know, what does it take to trigger this event? So are you looking for a form completion? Is there a button click event? What is it you're looking for the user to do that would trigger that event? So once you have all your list of events that you want to create, then you can go into GTM and start building your tags. And then you can create triggers that would fire each event off. So keep in mind what events are already included in enhanced measurements. You don't want to duplicate what's already being collected. And then you want to keep in mind what needs to be done through a GTM tag.
Yes, so building off of what Elizabeth just said, we actually have this handy dandy event implementation decision tree. So you can determine whether any of the events on your plan list actually need to be created in Google Tag Manager, or if they're already being tracked in GA4. So the first question to ask yourself is this event tracked automatically by GA4? And what we mean by this question is the most bare bone events. So the session start event or the first visit event. If it is something that is already being tracked by that, then you have no action required. You can use those automatic events in GA4 for your tracking. The second question to ask yourself is if the event is tracked by enhanced measurement. So some of those little more specific events that Elizabeth walked us through, so like the scroll event or site search. If it is tracked by that, make sure it's enabled in enhanced measurement and also verify that it is being tracked accurately. As we had mentioned, there are some special circumstances where you will still need a custom event. And then lastly, if it's not tracked by automatically in GA4 and it's not under the enhanced measurements, or if it's one of those special cases where you need additional tracking, then you will need to create a custom event. All right, so you've made your list of events that you would like to track, and you've determined which ones you need to create in Google Tag Manager and which ones you would like to label as a key event in GA4. So you do need to manually let GA4 know that these events you want to track as a key event so that it can be labeled as such in your reports. There are two ways that you can do this. The first way is by navigating to the admin panel, and then under data display, click on events. When you're looking at that page, you'll see all of your event names. So if the event has already collected data, you should see it here. On the right-hand side, you'll see a column that says mark as key event with a toggle. If you toggle the switch on, it'll mark the event as a key event. And moving forward, that event will pull into your key event reports. This does not work retroactively. Your second option is able to be used before you've even fully created the event or maybe published your Google Tag Manager container. This is especially useful if you want to make sure that your event is being labeled as a key event from the very first event captured. So you can navigate to the admin panel, go to data display and click on key events. You'll see all of your key events listed here if you have any already. But in the top right corner, you'll see a blue button that says new key event. If you click on this button, you can enter the name of your event and click save. And it will automatically label any events that come in with that name as key event.
So now let's look at some setup for tracking forms. So a basic setup that you may have for an RFI form is when a user fills out the form, puts in all their information and clicks on submit, they're taken to a thank you page. This thank you page is a great way to track how many users filled out the form. So you can go to GTM and set up a tag with the trigger for a thank you page where you're looking at a page view and you want to set the page URL to your thank you page and then add in there a page referrer. And the page referrer would be the page where your form was actually filled out. And this is showing that every user that was on the RFI form page went to the thank you page. It's counted as a page view. It's now going to send that event into GA4 to say that there was one form completion. Another option would be to use a trigger that would be the form submission trigger in GTM. And in this form submission trigger, it will trigger every time that someone fills out the form and clicks on the submit button. Make sure that you do add the wait for tags and check validation just to make sure that someone clicking falsely on that submit button doesn't count as a trigger. And then fill out the information for your form and attach it to your tag.
So Elizabeth was able to show us some examples of some more simple GA4 event tags and triggers. But there are some common scenarios in higher education that may require advanced Google Tag Manager knowledge. The first example is if you would like to track multiple buttons or link clicks as a single event. So for example, we often see tracking set up for all of the program clicks on a program page. You would see tons of events pull in, and it would be very hard to create a report if this is all separate events. So you may need some advanced GTM knowledge to make sure that you can track this all in just a single event. The second scenario that we often see is wanting to be able to track multiple forms as a single event. We most commonly see this with event registrations or tour registrations. It'd be very difficult to keep up with all the different tour types that you may have. So creating one event and then adding the parameter to pull in the event or the tour name is the best way to go, but may require some advanced knowledge. All right, so we've discussed the events that are automatically captured in GA4. We've discussed how to create a plan, how to mark your key events, and how to even create some events. But where can we find this data in GA4? What reports are available to us? So the first option in GA4 are the standard reports. So if you navigate to the main navigation on the left-hand side in GA4 and navigate to the report section, you will see quite a few different reports available to you. These are out-of-the-box standard reports created by GA4. So why would you want to use these standard reports as a way to analyze your data? Well, it's really excellent for those who are still learning GA4 and maybe you're not comfortable creating custom reports. And this is because these out-of-the-box reports always contain at least one dimension and a few metrics that Google thinks will be useful for your team. You can also still do some basic filtering to get a little bit more narrow insights. And on top of that, you can actually even permanently edit and save these reports either as a new report or just permanently alter the existing one so that it best suits your team's analysis goals. And lastly, the standard reports allow you to see all of your historical data, so there's no 14-month data retention limit. All right, so let's walk through some of the most commonly used standard reports. The first is the user acquisition report. So this allows you to analyze how users visit your site for the very first time. So these are only your new users. With this report, you can answer questions like, which channel is the most successful in leading new users to complete a key event? Or maybe you want to ask which campaigns are most successful in bringing new users to the site. A second report that's very popularly used is the traffic acquisition report. This is very similar to the user acquisition report. However, instead of focusing on just new users, this is focusing on all users. So whether it's their first visit or their 100th visit, they will be included in this report. You can answer questions like, which campaign is the greatest contributor to total events? Or maybe, which channel has the highest average engagement time per session? The next report is the Pages and Screens report. You will be able to analyze metrics based on page location. So you can answer questions like, which pages are my events mostly occurring on? And which pages receive the most views? Next up is the landing page report. So you can analyze metrics based on the page that users first view when they visit your site. So you can answer questions like, which campaign landing page is performing the best? Or which campaign landing pages need to be optimized based on average engagement time per session. And lastly, the events report. So you can analyze event metrics with the primary dimension being the event name. So you can answer questions like, how many events occurred last month compared to the same month last year? Or what are the most common click URLs with the enhanced measurement click event? So we're tying in that custom dimension that we had mentioned earlier. So you may be asking, if we have an events report, where is the key events report? Well, Google is actually currently in the process of rolling out the key events report. Hopefully this will be out soon, but in the meantime, there are a few other resources. You can go back to the key events page under the admin panel, which we had just previously talked about when talking about how to mark an event as a key event. As you can see in this screenshot, you have the ability to change the date range. You can also see what was the event count during that date range and a comparison value to the previous period. You can also take a look at the event report and add some additional filters to try and make it more similar to your key events. I will go over filters in just a moment. And then lastly, you could always create a custom Explore report, which is a little bit more advanced, but Elizabeth will cover that later on. All right, so how can we customize our standard report? So the first way you can do this is by adding a secondary dimension to your standard report. So as you can see in this top screenshot here, you have your default primary dimension that's just out of the box. And then on the right-hand side next to that, you see this little plus sign. If you click on that, you have the ability to add a secondary dimension. So some of your custom dimensions can come into play here. For example, when you're viewing your event report, it may be helpful to add the session campaign as a secondary dimension. And then you can see additional information about how those users got to your site that performed these events. A second way that you can customize your standard reports are with filters and comparisons. So you can add up to 5 filters and 5 comparisons at a single time to a standard report. As you can see in the screenshot below, the buttons are around the report name, so you can add the comparison at the top or add the filter below it. So if you want to create a filter, there are many ways that you can do this that are useful, but one common way we see it is if you want to use a filter so you're only seeing data from specific school subdomain or path subfolder. So maybe your schools and colleges are all using unique subdomains and you would like to analyze just data from those subdomains. This is your chance to do that with the filter. For the comparisons, a really common way that we see this used is by comparing traffic types. So if you have your internal traffic set up in GA4, you can build a comparison to view internal traffic, and it will compare that to all of your users. All right, so those last two examples of how you can customize your standard report are all temporary changes. But if you would like to alter your report permanently, either save it as the same report with these changes or create a new report, you can actually click on Customize Report in the top right corner by the date range when you're viewing a standard report. So you have the option to add additional dimensions to be used as primary dimensions, and you can also add additional metrics to your tables. So for example, you may want to add the engagement rate as a metric to the landing page report, or you may want to remove revenue as a dimension from the events report, for example. You can also add your filters here. You can add up to 5 permanent filters to your report. And again, this would be a great place to add a filter to make the data specific to certain subdomains or subfolders.
All right, so let's jump into exploration reports now. The menu on the left side, under reports, you'll see explore. So when you come in here to explore, there are some different templates that you can start with that you can base your reports off of. So why would you create a custom report? This is a great opportunity to use more than 2 dimensions in one report. As Rachel mentioned, that you can add a dimension to the standard reports, but if you want to look at multiple dimensions, the exploration is the way to go. This also gives you the opportunity to view a user path on the website, to group events together, to create a funnel report, or create a segment overlap to see how users overlap on different areas of the site. You can also save exploration reports to view later without modifying the standard reports. You can save it for you as a user, or you can save it and share it so everyone that logs into the property is able to see the same reports. So when adding dimensions and metrics to your explorations, keep in mind that you want to make sure that they're compatible combinations. Since you can add a variety of different kinds, it is important to choose ones that work well together. So for example, in this list here, we have the event names, where you can see the page view can show views, but views for a session start isn't going to show any. So when you're looking at event name, you would want to use the metric event count so that you can get the correct number of events. So events measured by views will only show the page view, and therefore it's not a good combination. Freeform explorations let you add multiple dimensions of metrics. So you can add, like the columns here, you'll see we're setting up a search term report. So we have our search term and our page refer and our columns, but we also have a breakdown by device category. So this gives you an extra added layer of information when you want to look at these freeform reports. And from this example, you can see that you can see the search terms that people are looking for on the page. So we filtered it to the academics page because we want to see what are people looking for on this academics page. Gives you the opportunity to see how many people are actually looking for particular programs. And in this example here, they're looking for more programs through the main search bar rather than on the page. So the page would definitely benefit from having a search bar within the navigation on the bottom. The page path exploration is a really great interactive report for you. So you can set it to event name, you can set it to a page path, and you can see where users are going through the site. So in this example, they're looking at the session start and then they're going through page view, and you can see how many are actually scrolling down the page. In the drop-down menus, you can select a page path, so you could look at what page they're going to next. So you could see the journey going from the home page to the academics page and then to what program people are looking at. Just as a tip for you, if you click on that start over in the top right corner, you're able to put in an ending page. So let's say we now want to go to that request for information page we talked about earlier and how people got to that form. It would give you the page path backwards. So now you can see where they came from the academic page, or did they come from the program page? How did they get to the RFI form? gives you some more insight into how users are going across the site. And another report that's really helpful is looking at the advertising reports. So this is a good chance to look at the question of, are my paid search campaigns directly affecting key events? So this report gives you the early touch points, mid touch points, and late touch points of your users and how they got to these events. So in this example here, you can see that paid search is the #1 way that users are coming into the key events. You can also see metrics such as how many days it took the users to the early touch point to completing a key event, and how many touch points did it take to get to that key event. This report shows that paid search has been a main contributor to key events over the past 30 days. Great way to show ROI for those ads that you're running. So if this seems like a lot, we're here to help you. Carnegie would love to partner with you with analytics consulting. We have lots of different opportunities that we can help you with analysis or setting up your GA4 or your GTM properties. We also have blog articles. Stop by our website and look at all the opportunities that you can have the information to help set up your GTM or your GA4. Carnegie also offers additional marketing services that we can help you with running those ads or any other digital services you may need. We're here to help you. Thank you so much for joining us for this presentation today.
Thank you.